everyone, welcome back to the channel. In this video, I will be using AI assisted coding to create a new feature for my community Buffstack and publish this new feature live with you guys. So essentially, I just wanted to walk you through my entire process of developing a new feature for an application and publishing it live using GitHub and Vercel. So before we dive in, Buffstack is my own community that I've created and I've actually just launched it today. I've migrated the entire community from Bubble to full code, and I've just published it live today. And so feel free to jump in, ask any questions, connect with AI builders, and I'll see you inside. Now, with that being said, let me show you exactly what I wanted to build here. So as people will come in, I want them to test the application, poke around, and maybe they will have feedback. So what I wanted to create is a item on the sidebar that essentially when the user clicks, it would open a pop-up and they would be able to submit feedback to me. And to make that happen, I will go into Claude and brainstorm, essentially create a spec document for this feature, and then I will bring over that document to Codex to actually code that feature. Now, if you're using Claude Code, if you're using Antigravity, if you're using Codex, the process is exactly the same for building the feature and deploying it live. And so I will show you step by step on how I actually do this for my own projects. Let's move over to Claude and let me find my Buffstack project. So this is a project that I've created, and I have a few chats here. So essentially this project holds some memory and some context about what Buffstack is. And so I will be using this project to generate the spec document for this new feature that I want to create. So whenever I would create a feature, I would simply start by saying something like this. Hey, so I'd like to create a new feature for Buffstack, which is essentially a feedback pop-up to allow my users to submit feedback about the application. So essentially what I want to do is to add a menu item called feedback. When the user clicks on that menu item, they should see a pop-up. And the pop-up should contain sort of like an input element so they can write about the feedback and submit. After submission, we should show them a thank you message, and we should also save this feedback inside Supabase. So we'll have to create a new table to store these feedbacks. And I've also connected resend to my application. And what I want to do with resend is to create a new template. It should be very simple without any heavy HTML elements. It can be simple text just to alert all the admins of the application whenever someone submits a new feedback. So it should send an email containing the name, the user email, and the feedback itself. Now, I want you to create a full spec document on how to implement this into my application, containing workflows, database, all the setup, so that I can bring that over to my agent to build this application feature. All right, so now with this, I'm going to send that over. And look, I've also connected resend, like I said, and it is essentially an email provider that we can use to send emails either to our users or to admins as notification. So whenever a user submits a feedback, I want to be notified of that feedback. So let's wait a few minutes until we have the spec document back from Claude. We have the spec document ready. It took probably like a minute or two, not so much. And so here's what the spec document contains. So we have overview, we have database. So we will be creating a new database in our Supabase called a new table in the Supabase called feedback. We have row level security, which is important. We have some considerations about the sidebar menu item. We have the feedback model. We have form state, so got feedback. Tell us what's working, what's broken, and what you'd love to see. We have also the success state, so thank you for the feedback. So here we have resend, so admin alert email. It's created here, so you have a new feedback submission on Buffstack, so full name, message, sending logic. So we have environment variables. So I've already connected, I've already set up these environment variables into my project, so it's probably not going to take this into consideration. Supabase client nodes, and so on. So you can see here that we have a very, very detailed specification. And so let me copy this and bring that over to Codex. And again, if you're using Claude Code, if you're using Antigravity, that's exactly the same thing. So I just have Codex open here on my VS Code desktop application. And so I'm going to start a new chat, and I will simply say something like this. So below we have a spec document to implement a feedback feature inside our application. I will be providing all these specs to you, and I would like you to implement this feature completely. So I'm going to come down here. I'm going to paste the entire spec. Now you could also essentially save this document here on architecture or specs actually. So you can save this spec document here to reference this in the prompt as well. But just for the purposes of this demonstration, I will just paste here and I will send this over. Perfect. So I'm running here GPT 5.4. I'm also using the fast mode, so we can finish this faster, and I'm using the select reasoning extra high. So if you're doing, very simple tasks, you might want to use high and medium. And if you're implementing something that's heavy on logic or it has multiple pieces, right? So we have Supabase, we have recent, we have UI, we have creating the workflows of the feature itself. If you want to do that in one shot using a singular spec document, I would recommend leaving the reasoning on extra high. So now Codex is going to work through this feature, and then we will be back to see what it has implemented. So it said, I've implemented a new controlled feedback model, wired feedback into the community nav without routing, added protected post feedback. It verifies auth with the regular Supabase server client, added and applied the Supabase migration. So I've actually connected my Supabase MCP here on Codex, and so it's able to generate or create new tables and add new fields into the Supabase automatically without us having to do it manually. It has also added a local environment variable called feedback admin emails. So every project will have an environment local or just a .env file, which holds your API keys. I'm not going to open this file right now because it holds all my API keys, but just know that also whenever we push this live, we will have to add this key feedback admin emails into Vercel as well, but we will get there. So now essentially what I want to do is to run this. Let's do npm run dev to actually see the application, and let's test this new feature. I've also checked Supabase. And so if I come here to Supabase table editor, I can see my new table as well, which is called feedback. So feedback will have an ID, a user ID, full name, email, message, and created at columns. So perfect. It created a table for us. And now let's go ahead and check the localhost environment of our application to test the feature. So looks like localhost is down. Let's see. Oh, terminated the process. So that might have been a mistake on my end. So npm run dev. So let's try this out. Terminated the other processes and try again. Dev walk is another instance of dev running. It might be this one here. Yeah, it is this one. So I was working here on Buffstack earlier today, and I left the localhost open. So that might have been the reason. So npm run dev. Let's try this now. Starting, ready, perfect. So localhost 3000. It will open our application. Let's log in. Keep in mind that since we're running this on localhost, it might seem a little bit slower than, compared to when we actually deploy the application. Just keep that in mind. And so, okay, I can see here the feedback menu item. It looks a little bit bigger than the other menu items. I don't really like this, but we can essentially tweak the design a little later. The design's not the best. I've never actually done a lot of the UI designs with Codex, to be really honest with you. The other pop-ups do not look like this. Let me see if I can show you how pop-ups in the application are supposed to look like. So if I come here to members and click on invite people, we get this type of pop-up. I guess it's not that different, but yeah, a little bit, but that's fine. Let's see if it works. So Buffstack, got any feedback? I'd like to have a feature where we can see, I don't know, quotes every day to keep engagement. And this is the feature that the user wants. So let's send the feedback. It is sending feedback now. Submitted. Thank you for the feedback. We read every submission, blah, blah, blah. Okay, perfect. So it looks like it has sent the feedback. So let's check Supabase, and the feedback is actually in. So Lucas, I'd like to have a feature. Okay, perfect. So the connection between Supabase is working. Now I'd like to check our email, or let's check resend first, and let's see if we actually sent the email. So if we come to emails, we have here, okay, new feedback from Lucas DeVito. So he has actually sent the email. Can I see the email here? Not entirely sure. But if I go to my Gmail account, then we should be able to see the feedback in real time. So Buffstack, new feedback from Lucas. You have a new feedback message. I'd like to have a feature where we can see quotes every day to keep engagement. So now you can see how we've implemented this feature essentially in one single prompt, right? We used Claude to generate the spec document. We brought that over to Codex to essentially implement the feature. And now what we want to do is to deploy this feature live. I'm not going to tweak too much the design right now, since it is a feature that it is a simple feature and it's basically just for the purpose of demonstration. I can always tweak the design later. So I guess I will just leave it like this and just teach you how to deploy this live. So I've created this simple diagram here on Whimsical as well, just to show you how the process of deploying live actually works. So what I'm using here is Codex in my case, but again, you could be using any sort of AI assisted development tool that generates code. And so what we want to do is to push our code base to GitHub. So we want to create a repository on GitHub that will store our code. And on GitHub as well, we can essentially do the version control of our code base, right? Now, from GitHub, we will push this code into Vercel. So essentially, we can deploy the code that is on GitHub into Vercel, and we can create some sort of a sync so that every time we push code inside GitHub, it automatically updates Vercel and pushes it live. So in practice, let's see how that works. Let's move over to GitHub. And on GitHub, you can come to repositories. And if you're starting a new project, you will essentially create a new repository, right? You will fill the information here. You can leave it private if you don't want to share the code with anyone. And you can simply create the repository. So in my case, I already have a repository for Buffstack. And so what you would do is to go inside that repository, come here into this button here, code, and copy this link, right? And so you would go into your Codex or Claude Code and you would paste the link and say something like, hey, I'd like to push the code base into GitHub. And so the first time that you do this, it will essentially ask you for credentials at some point, I believe, and then it will save this information to push to GitHub every time that you say something like push it live, right? And so what I can do here is something very simple, like push this version live. Right. And so it will understand that we need to push our code base into GitHub. And so it will think for a bit. It sometimes asks for confirmation. And so Let's see what it comes back with. And then on GitHub, we will be able to see our commit in here. So if we click here, we will see all the commits that we have. Each commit has a little code. And whenever Codex pushes our code base to our GitHub repository, we should be able to see our new commit here. All right, so it just asked the question, do you want me to push the feedback feature commit to the main branch to trigger the live deploy? And you can say yes, and don't ask me again for commands that start with this here, right? Or you can just do yes. So every time you try to do a commit to GitHub, it will almost always ask for confirmation. Now, you can bypass sort of these permissions if you go to settings as well, but I'd like to leave it at this for deployment so that it always asks for confirmation. And perfect. So it said I've pushed to main. So here's the code. Okay, so again, it reminded us that we have to add this feedback admin email to our Vercel environment as well. So if we come to GitHub here, let's see our new commit. So it said add in-app feedback submissions. And you can see here that is deploying to Vercel. So it actually says the deployment has been completed. If you refresh again, we should probably see the green check mark. So perfect. This means that Vercel has actually updated already. And so if we come here to Vercel, now, to set up a new project, it's also very easy. I can do a whole new video on how to deploy projects using GitHub and Vercel. I'm just showing my process here really quickly because I've already done these things. And so I'm not creating these from scratch. But if you want me to do that, I can definitely do a video for that. But essentially, you would create a new project and then you can import a Git repository. And so this is how whenever we push something to GitHub, it automatically updates Vercel. So I can come here to my project, Buffstack, and here we can see that the last update was the add-in feedback submissions, right? So this means that this is already live. And so if we go to Buffstack, the actual live link, if I click on login, it should log me in. And now I can see the feedback here. I can send some test feedback on the live version as well to see if everything works nicely. Now, if we come here to Supabase, it looks like it worked. And now if we come here to the email, obviously it's not going to work. So what I forgot to do is to actually add the environment variable. So let's go back here. Let's see how we can do this. So perhaps I can go to settings. I can do environment variables. And here we have all of our environment variables. So what I need to configure here is the exact same thing that we have here on our .env file here, right? That holds all of our keys. So whenever we deploy to Vercel, we also need those keys, and that's done manually for us. If you connect the Vercel MCP or CLI, it might be able to do that automatically. I just don't have this for this project specifically, but I might want to do this honestly. So let's copy this key. Let's come here and add a new environment variable. The key is this, and the value should be my email. Okay, perfect. So let's just save this. Added environment variable successfully. A new deployment is needed. So let's redeploy this. Perfect. So, and now it should be able to work. So if we come back here and click on deployments, we will see that we have our commit from Codex or the last GitHub commit, and now we are redeploying because we've added a new environment variable. So let's just wait here for this to finish building, and then we can do a last test to make sure that we are receiving the email properly. Okay, so it looks like it has redeployed. So let's try this one more time. Let me refresh this. Actually, let me go to Buffstack Pro and let me refresh this page. Now let me send another feedback. Feedback should be in here on Supabase. And now if we go to the email, we just received the feedback email. Perfect. So the feature has been implemented. The feature has been pushed to GitHub. The feature has been deployed live through Vercel. So I want to thank you so much for watching this video. Again, please join the community. Let's try to build this together and connect with people. I think a lot of people are sort of trying to figure out this AI era. And so I've just created this community so we can do this together. I hope this was helpful to show you my process. If you have any video ideas, comment down below. Just like, subscribe the video. It's a small channel, but I'm trying to keep growing and providing value here through the videos. So again, thank you so much, and I'll see you in the next one.